Gym sessions and sweaty summer activities are back, which means more funky smells in your clothes because sweat leaves behind bacteria that causes those hard-to-remove odors. Clorox fabric sanitizer products are ready to zap the stink out of fabrics in your home by getting rid of 99.9% of odor-causing bacteria. Eliminate odors in every load or sanitize fabrics between washes with one of our fabric sanitizer products. Search fabric sanitizer at Clorox.com to learn more. When it counts, trust Clorox. Use as directed.
Hear that? Is that America cheering or a sausage patty sizzling to perfection? It's time to cheer for Egg McMuffin and fresh cracked eggs at McDonald's. It's time to wake up to the aroma of freshly baked biscuits and treat yourself to a real honest-to-goodness morning meal. Breakfast, it's on at McDonald's. Now get any breakfast sandwich for just $2. Available only through the app. Mobile order and pay available at participating McDonald's. McD app download and registration required.
Thank you for calling 423-GET-FAME. That's 423-GET-FAME. I would tell you to leave a message, but the truth is, I don't really care. I've had this hotline open for months, and not one of you jokers have what it takes to be famous like me. So leave a message if you want, but don't expect a call back. I've got way more important things to do than to waste my time on losers like Mascarita Sagrada and you all. Thank you, and have a nice day.
Hey there, folks, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 10 of the Grave Consequences podcast. Caleb Baldwin, you can follow me at I am Caleb B. Follow Greg at X Maserati. Follow the show at GC_cast. Of course, check out everything here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. You can find the Social Suplex Podcast Network wherever you download your favorite podcast. You know, rate, review, and follow on Apple Podcast. We love that 5 stars, man. We love it. Check out our solo feed, of course. You know, you may be listening to it right now. Sorry, my cat is being ridiculous right now. Greg, how are you doing on tonight, Wednesday, August 18, 2021?
Well, my migraine's gone from when we started recording earlier, so I'm blessed in that case, and I mean that. Like, I'm so glad it's gone.
That's great to hear, man. But hey, you know, your migraine's gone, but something came back in this episode of Lucha Underground, which title is El Jefe. By the way, El Jefe is back. But besides El Jefe, the first thing we see, and my God, it was refreshing. You know, it's one of those, it's the opposite of you don't know what you got till it's gone. It's more like you don't know what you love until it comes back to you. And we see the bandstand and Shingon playing us into the building. I loved that, man. That was so refreshing.
They're definitely, and it's very nice how there's, like in the Batman movies, they always say that Gotham is a character. The world is a character. The temple very much is a character. And it was a different character when Katrina was in charge. And you could tell. And now that El Jefe's back, it's going back to the original character that we know and love. And it's just, it adds to the show. Whereas some wrestling shows, the ring is just a ring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. And, you know, this may be, you know, this is an aside. This may be controversial. I personally love when people put advertisements on rings, man.
I think it's stupid not to, because it's money. It makes it look like a legitimate sport. Because, you know, that's what legitimate sports do. They make money. And they may not do it in Lucha Underground because, you know, it's supposed to be like a temple. But I think other shows should. I think there's just money left on the table by not doing it.
WWE did it with the Cruiserweights and the Cruiserweight Classic. They had tap out on the mat, pardon me. I thought that was really cool. Personally, I think, you know, like you had said, that is money. Why doesn't WWE do that? I mean, I know they do that with advertisements, you know, throughout commercials on the show and everything, but like, it's one more advertisement. Like, Dana White completely hoarded out the UFC at one point in time when, like, you know, round cards were sponsored and clocks on the screen were sponsored. Everything was sponsored, man.
I mean, it's an advertisement you don't need to cut away for.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
You watch New Japan, and there's sponsors everywhere. I think if you're
Brock
a
Lesnar's ass is sponsored.
Jimmy John's, right?
Yes, sir.
I would think, and I'm not a business. I don't own a business, so this is coming straight out of my ass. I'm not a genius. I don't know something other promoters don't know, but you always hear about how independence. It's a struggle with money.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a way you can get money, and I think it's probably something the independents should probably try doing. It's like if you're struggling to keep the doors, or the lights on, advertise.
GCW has kind of taken that, started doing that because they're actually sponsored by PBR.
There you go.
Yeah. Of course, wrestling fans would like PBR.
Well, I had a job where I was a telemarketer in my early 20s, like my first job. And the bank I worked for, you know how they got a lot of their credit card offers is they would go to NASCAR. Very big on NASCAR, and they'd have applications, and they would just advertise they would just have people there, and they would just have a bunch of flyers, and they would get a bunch of NASCAR fans because they wanted the NASCAR pictures on their credit cards. It's sports are a great place to advertise. Do it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
People sell merch, right? It's the same fucking thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But hey, Dario Cueto is in the ring. And he says, next week we're starting an all-new trios tournament, so that's exciting. Pentagon comes out and interrupts Dario Cueto when the mention of a number one contender is brought up, and Dario says, hey, because Pentagon says, hey, the only reason that your brother, your hermano, Tanza, is the champion is because I wasn't in Aztec Warfare. And Dario shoots off at the mouth to the wrong guy. And he says, hey, maybe you weren't in Aztec Warfare because you're not championship material. And Pentagon hears that, receives it, registers it, grabs Dario by the throat, says, hey, I want your brother and I want him for the title. Dario says no. So Pentagon then gets the smaller and weaker proprietor of Lucha Underground, Dario Cueto, in position to potentially break his arm. And Pentagon says, hey, am I going to get a title match or am I going to break your arm? And Dario says, no, until Pentagon really starts to wrench back a little, like he's about to, pull the trigger. And Dario says, see, you'll get your title match. You'll get my brother. So we've got a world title match tonight, and all it took was some coercion,
some assault, threatening.
Hey, it's an underground fighting temple. That sort of thing's not off the table.
You know what? You corrected me, and you're right. This is how I learn.
You're a better man for it.
I know.
Our first match in the second run of the Dario Cueto regime is the crew of Mr. Cisco and Cortez Castro against Taya and Johnny Mundo. And the story here was Johnny Mundo not tagging in until Taya gets the advantage over the crew, which, just kind of further, we talked about it last episode. We talked about Johnny Mundo and Taya having like a Joker and Harley relationship. I feel like this further kind of illustrates that,
And I'll be frank, I didn't like it here. You're right, it does. And they're definitely going for that. But it's the fucking crew.
Yeah.
Why is Johnny afraid of them? They're bums.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it's one of those, because Johnny hasn't really had anyone to take the heat for him until now. So it's like, maybe he's like, well, I can, so I should.
Well, he also had a feud with them. Yeah. And him and Puma won against them and Big Rick.
Well, I'm just saying that maybe Johnny is getting perezoso, as the Spanish-speaking contingent would say, lazy.
I can see that. I still didn't. It was hard for me to reconcile in my head. I got it. It was for heat, but it was just kind of like, all right, well, Johnny can stomp these guys, so I don't really get it.
So Taya is having to fight this match basically on her own and doing her best. And Johnny's in the ring when all of a sudden we hear the familiar voice of Brian Cage saying, "I'm a machine." And Brian Cage stalks down the ring, down the steps to the ring, stalks Johnny out of the ring to watch Taya get beaten by the crew. And so the crew gets the win. They get the winner's purse, thanks in huge portion to the machine, in my opinion.
And I still don't really care for this match. I didn't like that. That works out, but it's, I just wouldn't feed Taya to the crew.
It was a 2-on-1 situation, so I don't mind it.
It was, but they still suck.
Yeah, they're not there.
That's like losing to J&J Security.
Look, maybe Ricky Reyes is a great wrestler outside of Lucha Underground. Maybe Lil Cholo is great outside of Lucha Underground, but I'm not impressed by what I've seen in the show.
Yeah, and I'm speaking purely in kayfabe. I'm not even talking about them as wrestlers in general. I'm saying like purely in kayfabe. They're less than J&J Security. They're like who were the guys with Jinder Mahal?
The Singh brothers.
The Singh brothers. Yeah, they're like maybe a little bit. See, they lost their third guy that they needed. And they've been barely muscle for Chavo. Like, and when they're with Chavo was the better of the two, right? Yeah. And this is Chavo we're talking about. Yeah. Like, I'm just like I'm power setting. Like, I'm talking about who's the strongest Super Saiyan. Like, Chavo was better than the both members of the crew. So, and Johnny Mundo wouldn't be scared of Chavo. And I'm definitely nitpicking. I understand that. It's just this match didn't. I feel like it didn't hurt her ultimately, but it was just kind of like, I don't know. I just wouldn't have done it.
Well, I get it, but the story here wasn't like, hey, Taya can't beat the crew. It was Johnny Mundo is scared shitless of Cage.
And you're right. That was a good portion of it. I just feel like it could have been done a better way.
Yeah, maybe you're right. After that, we cut
because they're heels. They're heels.
They're kind of in a weird spot right now because if you remember the last time we saw them, they walked out on Chavo, which is kind of a babyface thing to do because Chavo sucks, as we know. But
why did they walk out on Chavo?
Because they kept getting beaten up for him, and they were clear, like they knew at this point, like, oh hey, we're patsies. How about we just don't do that anymore?
Because they didn't want to get beat up. I think what it would have been like. Let's take the crew out of it. Let's say it's Eros and Drago.
Okay.
Right. How much more sense would that make?
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
That's all I'm saying. Is it just the crew was the wrong opponents, I think, and I think they killed her with a shatter machine. Am I right?
I believe so. Yes.
Which I do like.
The shatter machine's awesome.
It's a great move. I love it. I also like the FTR move where they have him in the leg lock, and then the other guy jumps down and stomps the leg.
Oh yeah, that's brutal.
I love that move.
Brutal. To quote Hugo Savinovich. But hey, after that we see a vignette and we see pictures of butterflies, and I was like, oh no, this is a Marty the Moth thing. And Marty is looking at a book, and Marty once again dressed like a yuppie, and he's telling us the story of the Moth tribe, and he mentions that the Moth tribe was always drawn to wealth, like their namesake was drawn to the flame. So it's like, okay, like he's old money then.
Yep, they've added to his gimmick, so you kind of understand why he's in the temple now. And they could have done, and we've talked about this before, they could do a better job explaining the tribes. They really could have done more world building because they kind of needed it. Now you understand. Well, you might not, but the tribes are very important, and Marty's just not a crazy fan. He is actually a part of a tribe.
Yes. Yeah, and he's claiming to be Aztec, like he is a part of a tribe.
And I think there's a little bit of heat there. Like he might not actually be Aztec; they just might have money. But the best part about this segment, not only do they add to his character and explain the money thing, they introduce Mariposa, but they have her beat up these bodyguards in lucha masks.
Yep.
Which is an aesthetic I like because it reminds me, if you've ever seen Italian Spider-Man.
I have not.
Okay, Google that when you get a chance. Or Danger 5. Imagine a like 70s kind of like a hokey kind of detective show during the day. Like, you know how like maybe even Starsky and Hutch, like how they would be wacky and over the top. That's what this reminded me of. I love that aesthetic, and it's almost comical, but Danger 5 or Italian Spider-Man, this is what that reminded me of. I just like the idea of wrestling kind of being in another genre.
Yeah.
It's like a mixing of genres that I really think is cool, but that's more of a subjective opinion, I think.
Yeah, maybe you're right. But this serves to tell us the story of the Mariposa, and the Mariposa was always like the fixer of the tribe, which, not to be chauvinistic, but it does kind of crack me up that like the fixer of the tribe has always been a woman. And the mask, the Mariposa mask, has been passed on from generation to generation. And the current woman under the Mariposa mask, as Marty tells anyway, which he could be an unreliable narrator, but who knows? Actually, I know, and I'll tell you why later. But he tells us that the current iteration of the Mariposa is the most powerful so far. And the reason I say he's possibly an unreliable narrator is because the book he's looking at is empty.
I didn't notice that. That's fantastic.
There's no at all in that book.
See, Marty's a great character, and even beyond the rant I went on that you were just like, sure, whatever.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bury it or anything.
That was cool. I was definitely going on a very specific personal rant about some minor aesthetic I like. But to your point, they're definitely building her up to be like a Japanese ninja, kunoichi, female assassin. And they do a good job of building her up to make her deadly. Yeah. And the female wrestler they have portraying her is one that was known for having a very mean streak. She was very popular. Cheerleader Melissa. She was in TNA, and she's really good.
Well, that's funny. Her TNA run was as Raisha Saeed, like the interpreter for Awesome Kong, and she didn't wrestle a lot in TNA for some reason, which is funny because she's regarded as very, very good.
I think she actually wrestled as another one too.
That possibly, yes, possibly.
Around the same time Daphne was there.
That sounds right. After that vignette, we see Katrina showing up in Dario Cueto's office, and he calls her a ghost, which it's like, oh, like Dario knows he's dealing with the supernatural right now. And Dario explains hey, thank you for taking care of the temple, but I own it. I always did. I always have. So I'm in charge again. And it's at this point I realized Katrina was basically just a squatter.
They could have explained this more, if the winner who has the title is in charge or whatever. Yeah, it is kind of either explain it or stop bringing it up.
Yeah. But by the way, Katrina here, because Katrina's your brother may not fear death, but I know you do. And at some point death's gonna come for your brother. And Dario says hey, maybe Mil Muertes, maybe we could work together. And it's ooh, Katrina, here's something familiar for you. You're on the opposite side here, because Dario is doing to you what you were doing to King Cuerno earlier this season.
Mm-hmm.
You are being used right now, and she doesn't like it one bit. So it's oh, she is a bitch, dude.
Yeah, she's not too happy with how things are turning out for her, because they had everything.
Yes, they had literally everything. Yeah,
and they had the trios titles for a little bit.
Yeah,
they had the main championship, and they had a patsy controlling the path to the champion, or one of the paths. So she's kind of not scrambling, but she's trying to pick up the pieces. And
oh, here's the thing, though. further analysis, this unraveling, it was her own doing, because like she's the one who gave Jesse and the Rippers their rematch, with the stipulation of, win or get fired. It was basically her attempt to try to get them out of the temple, and that backfired. And
she backfired with the Aztec warfare by making it for the title.
Exactly, yeah, because if it wasn't for the title, okay, maybe Mil Muertes doesn't win, but Dario Cueto doesn't have complete control of, the belt again until you said, okay, this is for the title.
Yeah, she fabricated her own, or she created her own destruction.
Mm-hmm.
And someone else came in and swooped in that she didn't see coming.
Yep.
She's kind of reeling.
Yep.
In a way.
Yeah, but she was fighting a war on way too many fronts. Like she was trying to accost Phoenix, trying to humiliate and kind of embarrass and hold back Pentagon, and that backfired. And the trios, the now 3 or 2-time trios champions, Jesse and the Rippers, and that backfired. And that leads us to something Dario alluded to, our rematch for the trios championships. We've got Jesse and the Rippers, Ivelisse, Son of Havoc, Angelico versus the Disciples of Death, Trece, Barrio Negro, and I forget the third one's name for some reason.
Did you say Sinestro?
That's Sinestro de la Muerte. Yeah, there we go. That's right. I wrote them down as purple, gold, and white, just based on the skulls there. But thankfully, their names were announced during the match. By the way, this is an elimination match, and Ivelisse is first eliminated. Not surprising, she is the weakest of the Technicos, and it's not just because she's a woman, but she is smaller. She is pretty much always injured. Just gets dominated.
Yeah, she's Mr. Glass.
They called me. Oh man, great stuff. Trece is eliminated when Angelico hits the Fall of the Angels in the corner. Now we're even up 2-2. Angelico, oh, by the way, Ivelisse's elimination came with the assistance of Katrina, who was ringside. Katrina doesn't have the stone for some reason. I don't understand.
I thought she did.
Oh no, she did. Yeah, you're right. She did. Pardon me.
She tried to. She did use it.
We'll say it. We'll see what happens.
Okay, I thought we were there. My bad.
Oh, you're good, bro. And Angelico gets physically dominated and eliminated, and that means Son of Havoc is all alone. Not for too long, because he hits the Warriors Way foot stomp, and Barrio Negro is eliminated. By the way, I call it the Warriors Way because think what you will of Low-Ki, but when he hits that foot stomp, it's killer, dude.
Yeah, that's fine. Low-Ki's legitimate.
Yeah. He may be an asshole, but he's a very good fighter. Very good wrestler, pardon me. Katrina decides to lift the stone, but the formerly eliminated Ivelisse comes to the ring and neutralizes Katrina. Matt Striker at this point yells, "Fly, you bearded bastard." And big boy Matt Cross, Son of Havoc, hits the shooting star press, and Jesse and the Rippers retain the Lucha Underground Trios Championship just before the Trios tournament can start again. Dario is in his office, and Rey Mysterio's with him, and Rey Mysterio says, like, "Hey, I'm here for Dragon Azteca." And Dario says, like, "Oh, yeah, it was great to see him return." And Rey's like, "No, not him. His mentor. My mentor."
And Dario's like, "You care about this storyline? No one else does."
And Rey's like, "Hey, I know his mentor came here to the temple and he didn't come out. And I know you're connected to it somehow." And Dario says, like, "Hey, like, I had nothing to do with," or he blames Matanza. He's like, "I'm pretty sure Matanza killed Dario or killed Dragon Azteca." It's like, well, that's reasonable. He comes out in a jumpsuit with blood on it, so I understand where you get that from. And Dario decides to just full on gaslight because, well, he's technically not lying. It's like, you saw it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And Dario says, like, hey, you know, I would love to have you and Dragon Azteca Jr. here in the temple, but we got to put the past in the past. And Dario offers a drink. I'm going to assume tequila. I hope that doesn't make me racist, but I'm assuming tequila. And they drink 2 El Dragon Azteca. And Rey Mysterio takes the drink kind of begrudgingly.
Yeah, he probably doesn't care for the storyline either.
Well, it's one of those. I think Rey is just kind of like, I'll go along to get along. But it's like, I don't think Rey has put Dario or Matanza out of his mind.
No, and he shouldn't, because Matanza's going to murder everybody.
And I mean, not only that, but Dario is a wrestling promoter, so by nature, he's also a liar.
True, very true.
Our next match was Sexy Star with the Mac versus the Mariposa. And a lot of this match was Sexy basically evading, you know, trying to get away from Mariposa, getting in strikes when she can. Oh, by the way, was the Mac wearing a Ribera Steakhouse jacket?
I didn't notice.
Here's the thing. That's what it looked like, you know, because back when you could still travel internationally, wrestlers would always go to Ribera Steakhouse and get a jacket and everything. And those jackets look really cool. Google that if you can. At some point. But it looked like he was wearing a Ribera Steakhouse jacket. It's like, are you showing off? But the story here was not the Mac wearing a Ribera Steakhouse jacket. The story here was Mariposa basically dominating the scared and scarred Sexy Star.
This is a match for story.
Yes.
I won't say anything bad about it, but I honestly don't get into it until a match or two later.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they have this feud culminates really well, in my opinion.
Yes. Usually when a wrestler is scared of another wrestler, it's done for comedy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard for me to not. It's hard for me to take those kind of stories seriously sometimes.
Yeah.
Just because it is kind of like they're alluding that there was some kind of psychological, maybe physical torture.
Yeah.
But they don't give too many details. So what happened? This is I don't know. I don't want to nitpick too much, but this is one of those things where they went as far as wrestling normally does, but maybe it needed some more detail. Yeah. And I also can't help but think about how disappointing of is it for the people in live. Like, you know how they have matches that are for story and they're necessary. Yeah. But when you're live, sometimes those kind of matches can be duds to you, even though you understand it's for story.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's me. I can't help but think about how, especially if you're a Sexy Star fan.
Yeah, no, you're right. Sorry, I just got sent a solid Photoshop from one of my friends. Mariposa gets the win with I made a mistake in that I wrote down the joke name that I gave it because it's something butterfly with something.
Bullet with butterfly wings, Smashing Pumpkins.
That's what I wrote down. Bullet with butterfly wings. I know that's not what Stryker said. That's what I wrote down.
He said butterfly with broken wings.
There we go. But yeah, despite all of Mariposa's rage, she's still just a moth in a cage.
There you go. I like how we both immediately went to Smashing Pumpkins.
We're like women syncing up.
There you go.
Your main event of the evening, the Lucha Underground Championship is on the line when Matanza faces Pentagon Jr. And I knew, like, oh God, this is that match. I remembered when I saw the runtime on Tubi was 6 minutes and 33 seconds left in the show. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah. This is very much a story episode.
Yeah, normally, title fights like this, they're going to get like 10, 15. No, this was 6 minutes like when Matanza came out.
Yeah, and they're going for... I'll let you continue. I don't want to steal your thunder or where you're going.
You're good, bro. But, we're early on into the Matanza story here. Matanza it can't be taken off his feet by Pentagon. Everything Pentagon's doing is just nothing. And eventually Matanza is like, okay, my turn, and just starts killing Pentagon Jr. And at one point, Pentagon's back is just gone. Like, Pentagon's even, like, beckoning the ref, like, my back. And Vampiro points it out.
He does. I still think they could have done, like, I think he should have done, like, a big backbreaker, like the one that Stu Grayson does.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it was, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't think it was emphasized enough because, you know, they just start saying like, oh, his back's hurt. It's like, all right. Like we were talking about the previous episode, FTR's, the one where Dax has someone in that grapevine leg lock, and then Cash will jump from the top and stomp the leg. It's obvious that's breaking an ACL or something, right?
Yeah.
Besides throwing Pentagon through a few tables and the wall, what was the move that hurt his back?
Well, I don't know. I figured it was just kind of like the joint manipulation, you know?
But what move did he do that was manipulating his back? See, that's the problem. That's the problem. Yeah. And I'm not attacking you with that. I'm just saying, like, that's the problem. It should be even, it should be obvious what hurt it.
Yeah, no, you're right. There should have been like a Dark Knight Rises moment where
Hogan like versus Brock Lesnar. Remember Brock Lesnar having that bear hug?
Oh my God. Yeah. He just passed him out in the bear hug on that episode of SmackDown.
It has to be pretty blatant. Like, people get on Cody for having certain types of matches, but Cody's very good at telling a story with limbs and stuff like that. And even I'm trying to think of another recent example of something. Let's say Evil East with her leg. Like, I mean, well, no, I'm sorry, that's a bad example because we don't. You'd have to be watching very carefully to see what twisted her ankle, but it's just to me, it just seems like out of the blue. It's like, oh no, his back's hurt. And it's like, from what? Like, what did you like? Okay, this is kind of for real life. In, like, let's say you're watching an MMA fight, you know, that makes sense. Like, you can't always see, like, sometimes that's why they have to replay certain punches. You're like, that punch knocked him out. Like, real life is different than wrestling. You're telling you get the, you know, you know in advance how it's going to happen. You can plan the moves. So make it, you're telling, like, it's like a drama. It's like a play. Like, emphasize, like, show me. They could have done something to actually hurt Pentagon's back where he would have been safe for me to be clear. But they could have had him do a spot where, let's talk like old, like the kind of wrestling that Josh will go back every once in a while watch, like old Memphis wrestling. Oh, he did a pile driver. Now he's coming out with a neck brace. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that kind of shit. And they didn't even do that. It just seemed to me like it was just bad.
I get you. I understand.
It made Pentagon look weak.
Yeah, it kind of did. Pentagon, his back's gone. He hates the wrath of the gods. Matanza pins him. Matanza is still the Lucha Underground champion. After the match, Pentagon clearly hurt. Vampiro's checking on him. Vampiro's like trying to back down Matanza, but it's like, you're not going to back down Matanza.
No.
And Matanza even kicks Vampiro for trying to back him down. And Matanza then tosses Pentagon Jr. out of the ring and power bombs him through the announce table. Dario's pleased. Matanza and Dario walk off. Pentagon is lifted onto a gurney and he is taken out of the temple. And that is why season 2, episode 10 of the Grave Consequences podcast will be called The Death of Pentagon Jr.
Yeah, I feel like you could have had the same outcome, but like I just got done ranting about it. Just the emphasis and, like you said, 6 minutes. I mean, you could have just done like a backbreaker or a fall away slam. Or, I mean, there's so many wrestling moves where you could have been like, you could have told a story like, oh, because he did this move, it broke his back.
Even like a Uranagi would do just fine.
A fucking, what's Lex Luthor's torture rack, Argentine backbreaker. Yeah. You know, the Stu Grayson backbreaker.
Yeah.
Tiger, what's it? The Jericho used to do the double underhook into a backbreaker. There's so many things you can do. And I feel like Matanza just did the, slams and power bombs and stuff, and which in real life, yes, could hurt your back. I remember in high school, someone power bombed someone in wrestling class, and the kid went to the hospital because he couldn't breathe because it knocked the wind out of his lungs. Jeez. But this isn't real life. You have to kind of spoon feed us a little bit.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. You're right. So this was a story episode. So with that, what would you rate this episode of Lucha Underground? What would you grade this?
Well, I had a higher grade originally, but now I'm upset thinking about it. So I'm going to give it a D.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Wow. So
yeah, I didn't care for, I didn't understand the psychology between I already ranted about Taya and Mundo versus the crew. Yeah. I didn't care for the Pentagon match.
Yeah. So this is one of the worst episodes you've ever seen so far. And I'm not going to go that harsh. I'm going to give this a C+, just based on potential, where the story can go. And maybe that's unfair, especially since I've already seen the show. But I don't know. I don't think it earned a D. I mean,
I can justify it.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't rewatch it.
I'm not going to your grade.
I wouldn't rewatch it because it's not a good episode, frankly. And it is important for the story, but I wouldn't want someone to know this part of the story. I would actually advise them to skip it because I'd be like, you're going to be disappointed. If they're a new fan, I'd be like, catch up, watch up to this, just realize, and I would just tell them Pentagon gets injured in the next episode, so you could skip it. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't pay off anything. What's it set up? It didn't really set up much besides extending the cage feud with Taya and Mundo.
Oh, this episode, yes, yeah.
That's my point. Is it doesn't have much payoff.
Okay, look, and without going into spoilers, this is going to set up something for someone. With being as vague as I can without spoiling too much, but Pentagon just got stretchered out of here. It could be a while before we see him again. Just a reference, the last guy who got stretchered out was Blue Demon Jr. in the second episode of the first season, and we didn't see him for 20 more weeks. So it could be sometime until the Pentagon Jr. And it's not going to be 20 weeks because this season is shorter than the first one, but it could be a while until we see him again.
Yeah, I just overall, it's not something I would show a new fan.
Yeah,
returning fans, I would skip it because I don't. You know the story, so you don't really need to see it.
Yeah.
Who cares about the Three Stooges versus Jesse and the Rippers? It's already been done. Who cares? The only parts I really liked were Marty's vignette with Mariposa, and that's kind of it.
Yeah. So that was the show. Join us next week when we review season 2, episode 11 of Lucha Underground. The title of that episode is Bird of War. So it could be a Phoenix-driven episode. But hey, thank you for listening. And don't come into a ring with Matanza if you've got a bad back, because if you do, you could suffer stretcher consequences.
Gym sessions and sweaty summer activities are back, which means more funky smells in your clothes because sweat leaves behind bacteria that causes those hard-to-remove odors. Clorox fabric sanitizer products are ready to zap the stink out of fabrics in your home by getting rid of 99.9% of odor-causing bacteria. Eliminate odors in every load or sanitize fabrics between washes with one of our fabric sanitizer products. Search fabric sanitizer at Clorox.com to learn more. When it counts, trust Clorox. Use as directed.
Sports have a way of bringing us all together. And at Sleeper, we developed a fantasy platform designed to make leagues more fun and personal. Sleeper includes an integrated chat and every feature you could want for your NFL, NBA, and even esport leagues. Plus, it's completely free with no ads. See why millions have made Sleeper the fastest-growing fantasy platform. Download Sleeper on the App Store or Google Play today.